Hey, greetings everyone from our home to yours. I hope that this finds you safe and well. Happy Sunday. Today, our scripture passages come from Matthew chapter 25, verses 1 through 13. And this passage is a story, or what we commonly call a parable, and parables are stories that teach a lesson about the 10 bridesmaids, or some older translations say 10 virgins. Now, this is really a troubling passage because it ends with some people getting into the party and some people not getting into the party. And that could be tough for some people to accept, that there are some people who get to party with Jesus and some people who don't. So this story is about a groom that goes off to prepare his father's home for his wife. And they would do this by adding a room onto their father's house. And then once that room was finished, the father would say to the groom, "It is finished. It's good to go. Go get your wife and bring her home." In Jesus' time, generally from betrothal or the promise to get married until the home was fixed and taken care of, generally could take about a year or so. And so the exact time when the groom would come for his bride to take her home would vary. But that time when he would come to take the bride home would start the marriage banquet. But it was an unknown at that time when it would happen based on the preparations of the home. And those that were invited to the marriage banquet, they kind of had to keep up with the progress of the preparations of the home. And they kind of had to be ready. It was expected of them as invitees, as guests. They had kind of be ready when the groom came to get the bride so that they could attend the party. Because they really didn't have the printed wedding invitations and, smartphones that could, put the calendar date on there and give us reminders. So this particular story tells us that the groom did something that was rather unexpected and very countercultural. This groom left to get his bride and bring her home at night, in the middle of the night, actually, instead of waiting until daylight. And the groom got to the village about midnight, and all the guests and the invitees had already, been in bed for a while. After all, the custom dictated that the bridegroom would wait until daylight, and the bridegroom would have sent someone ahead that would have gone and warned the invitees, the guests, that the groom was coming, and therefore they could be ready and they could start making their way to the party. But since the groom was coming at night, the guests would have had to use lamps in order to make their way to the party because, they didn't have iPhones or Android phones to turn the flashlight on to get them there. So in this story, Jesus divides the bridesmaids, not just the regular attendees, but the certain group of people, the bridesmaids, into two groups, the wise and the foolish. We don't know exactly why he chose bridesmaids, but I think the reason had to be that these were people who couldn't choose not to come to the party, that it was imperative that these particular people who were close to the bride had to be there. And that kind of helps us understand a little bit who this parable, this story is particularly for, in my opinion. So the two groups, the wise and the foolish. The wise group was the wise because they had thought forward enough to buy enough oil in the weird countercultural event that the groom came at night. They would have enough oil to be ready to get to the party. The foolish did not think far enough ahead, and so they did not buy enough oil, or any oil enough for that matter, since culture dictated that the groom should come during daylight hours. Now, remember, the hints that Jesus is trying to make with this story kind of lead us to believe that the wise group knew the groom well enough to know that he just didn't do things the way that everybody else did. And the foolish group are foolish because they should have known that the groom was going to pull a stunt, like coming at midnight. Now, with these hints aside, there are a lot of folks who try really hard to figure out the characters of the story. I mean, that's kind of what you do with a parable. You try to figure out who's who and what's what and why is this story, this parable being told, because it's teaching us a lesson. So the questions that we have about this particular story is the groom Jesus or just a groom? Theologians have said that the groom was actually God the Father coming for the kingdom of Israel. and that the bridesmaids were Israel. Others have said that the bridesmaids were the church and not Israel. Others have said that the bridesmaids divided like that were the saved and unsaved. I'll tell you, all those are interesting rabbit holes to explore. And it's fun to try and figure these things out because we really won't know until we get face to face with Jesus and ask him. However, we have to look at what the point of the story is and what the takeaway of the story is to really figure out and get closer to the understanding of the story. So more than anything, I think the overarching theme of this story, or this parable, what this parable is trying to teach us, is that we have to be prepared. Matthew chapter 24 found Jesus telling his followers that the kingdom of heaven was coming soon, and that what we call the end times, Jesus' return, is going to happen, but nobody but God the Father knows when that is going to happen. And so in Matthew chapter 25, Jesus is telling, because we don't know when God the Father is going to send the Son back for us, and by the way, we are the bride of Christ, so if that helps you a little bit with this understanding, because we don't know when Jesus is coming back for us, the preparation in the story is really the warning. It's to be prepared because we don't know when Jesus is coming back. We don't know when God is coming back for us. And the preparation in the story that we have for today is in the form of oil lamps. And it makes sense in the cultural context because they had to make their way to the party, and that was the means of doing it. But I'm not sure that it's a very important part of the story, meaning that I don't think that we can take that metaphor and use it some way. It may be a metaphor for something like being spiritually ready, but I'm not sure that the preparation of the oil is the part of the story that we have to focus on. I think it's part of the story that teaches that we have to be prepared by whatever means it takes for us to be prepared, and that it's not a metaphor that we need to really dig at. Now, I personally believe that this is more of a warning to Israel than to the church. I believe that it was more of a warning to Jesus' disciples rather than all of his followers. And I say that because he would have been more comfortable calling them wise or foolish because they had been with him and knew more about him, and they should expect him to be different and countercultural than anybody else. But regardless, the point is, it's in the Bible for a reason. The message is that we have to be prepared. But how? Well, we have to be prepared for Jesus' return simply by following Jesus, living for him, by dedicating who we are, all of who we are, to him, believing that he died for us and provides our salvation for that. So it's really not about oil. It's not about virgins. It's about our heart and are we prepared? So may you go this week and be prepared because Jesus is coming again soon. Grace and peace to you. God bless you.